I'm here with Kristin Ward, and last time we talked about a couple of really cool things. We talked about the origin of folklore and wisdom tales. She has been doing a few summer projects and has been pretty involved with developing a summer storytelling series, among other things. I am excited to learn more about what Kristin's been up to.
Thanks, Anjali.
Yeah.
So when we were first going into quarantine, I saw a lot of performers around me starting to do some really great things online. But I just needed more time to process. It was a lot of change for me at once. I'm a live performer and a theater artist. So everything was very uncertain, and I wasn't quite ready to work in this new sort of online medium. I needed some time to think about what I really wanted to do rather than just put anything out there. So I finally came up with the idea around the end of May, and thank you for helping me get my feet wet with the Shakuntala Tattercoats duet that we performed. I think that was a really wonderful evening, and that's available on my YouTube as well as your Patreon right now.
Yes, I absolutely love performing that duo version. Personally, we've done it too at a couple conferences, and I just find it so fulfilling.
And I love working with those tales because in both of them, the transformation where you see the Disney version and the fairy godmother comes in and now she's in a beautiful dress. But in Shakuntala and Tattercoats, the transformation is much more internal. In a way, they have to find their own self-love and their own center before they can find outside love with another, which is a really good lesson for, that has stood the test of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you also did Swan.
Yes. So I was working on, way back when I was working on the first versions of Many Voices, One Story. I hadn't started working with Tattercoats yet, but I was working with 4 different women of different backgrounds. And I started really wondering what my storytelling culture would be. Because, like I said in the first interview that you did with me, I'm adopted, and like a lot of Americans of European descent, I didn't grow up with any specific cultural background, just, sort of American. So I really started to think, what are my ties and what is the story that I want to tell? And out of that came Swan. It's based on the Hans Christian Andersen tale of The Ugly Duckling, which I loved as a child because it is about that sort of transformation, and eventually you're going to grow up and you're going to have this beauty and you're going to find happiness and belonging. And as I grew, I realized that my sense of happiness and belonging isn't dependent on finding the ones who look like me. Who I am is more than how I look. It's about all of the people who have made me who I am along the way. So I wanted to tell that story, and that's what Swan is. I've performed it a few times at Piccolo Spoleto in Charleston, South Carolina, and the Children's Museum here in Pittsburgh, along with a few other places. And it's going to be in the next couple of episodes as sort of I wouldn't say stripped down version, but less theatrical version, I'm going to do a two-parter in my upcoming Summer of Stories.
And when is that?
So right now, Summer of Stories is going into its 4th episode. It launches every Thursday at 7 p.m., premiering on YouTube. So if you tune in at that time, you'll get to live chat with me as you watch. But past that, you can watch all of the episodes. They're going to stay on the YouTube channel. This week, I'm talking about the moon, and it's actually one of the Grimm brothers' less grim fairy tales. No one ends up in lead shoes or gets their eyes pecked out at the end. So it actually sort of ends happy, which is unusual for a Grimm tale. And then Swan will be a 2-parter, which starts next week.
And we were just talking about how relevant that is for this week, because this weekend is the lunar eclipse.
It is, yes. And so each episode features a story and then an activity and an interview that help connect audiences a little bit more in depth to that story. So it's a great way for families to watch together and then have something to talk about afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
This week, I'm telling the story about the moon, and then I'm interviewing the manager of Buell Planetarium at the Carnegie Science Center. And it's really exciting to hear the newer stories that we have about the moon. Because, you know, when our ancestors were telling stories, they had to explain, you know, what is that big ball in the sky and why do I sometimes see part of it? Now we have science to explain things, but it's actually just as fascinating. He was showing me some footage of how they believe that the moon was created, and it's like these beautiful balls of fire and rock coming together and molting together. And it was really great to watch. And, you know, I think being able to tell the old tales and then see our new tales really connects us to our past in new ways.
And you said that this summer you have been becoming more oriented towards learning how to tell stories online.
Yes.
Has it been challenging?
It has. You know, when I started, I would like get a tiny little panic attack every time I saw myself on video, because even doing Zoom, you know, you see yourself in this little square and you think, oh, am I doing dumb things with my hands? You know, what am I doing? Did I really just itch my nose on camera? And so as I go, I've been getting a little bit more comfortable. I've been using minimal equipment. Everything has been shot with my cell phone so far.
Yeah.
And although I did get this little $16 microphone that plugs into my camera, and so since then the sound has been a little bit better on it. I started playing with a green screen for the first time. So my goal is for each episode to be just a little bit better than the one before it. And then at the very end, I might go back in and do a little bit of post edit on some of the videos that I've filmed previously and just sort of, pretty them up and unify them a little bit more.
For what age range are these stories for?
I would say I tell for families and I tell for the young at heart.
Okay.
What I tell is great for families to listen to together and then talk about. I think it works best for ages 8 and up, but it depends on the kid, honestly. I've had friends bring their, 4 and 5-year-olds to my storytelling shows before, and they loved it. But those are kids who are used to going to a lot of theater. So, it depends. And then of course I tell a lot for adults as well.
And are you doing this every week of the summer?
It's 8 episodes total that I have planned. So I have 3 out already, and the next one comes out this Thursday. The story I told last week, Smalltime Superhero, is an original story that I wrote just for that episode. And it's a personal tale, which I don't always tell.
And what is that about?
It is about how I was able to be a small-time superhero by helping another person in a small way. Yeah. I don't want to give it away too much.
Yeah. I love that one story you told a few weeks ago about, was based on your grandfather.
Oh, yes. With the banjo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so heartwarming. Are you providing any gigs or performances via video conferencing for any organizations or parties right now?
I don't currently have anything like that going on right now. I've put a lot of effort in creating the Summer of Stories show. I would say I'm available right now. With the Summer of Stories, it's helped me to further develop some of the stories I already tell and get used to an online format. So that's been really good for me. I'm also available for small, say, porch concerts. At this point, keeping an eye on what's going on with number of cases and everything. At this point, I'm comfortable with outdoor small groups.
Okay. So you recently went to New York to record one of your stories.
I was there in the Finger Lakes area of New York State to visit my family, who I hadn't seen since last Christmas. So it was really wonderful. I got to see my mom. I brought an N95 so I could hug her because she's 78 and she's been very, very careful. So while I was there, I stayed at a cottage that my cousin owns right on Honeoye Lake. And it was beautiful. And at that point, I was getting ready to launch the second episode of Summer of Stories, which is The Dancing Lady. And that story starts and ends at the sea. So I was there, and there's this beautiful waterfront. And so I thought, well, I've got to take advantage of this and do some filming on location. And I was so glad I did, because I do like how that episode turned out. And as I was editing it, I thought, if I didn't know that I was there and filmed it, I would think that it was a green screen, because that lake was so beautiful.
Did you have the idea beforehand to have the lake there while you were telling the story, or how did that come about?
I had enough of an idea that I had my microphone and my tripod with me when I went up there, but I don't know if I'd fully fleshed it out until I saw the location of it.
And what is it about that background that you felt helped the story?
I think it gave a little bit of a visual. It's a lake and not the ocean, but it still has that sort of water feel. There's also, because the character travels, it was on a nature preserve. So there was a lot of different terrain in there that I could incorporate. There was a forest where I could, kind of go inside and have the shadows create the scene with robbers. So it made it a lot more creative for me. I also have a big connection to water. I grew up with always being around water. We had a pool. We were in lakes before we had a pool. And so water is very calming to me, especially in times of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was the perfect remedy to sort of put me in a place where I could artistically create.
I really resonate with that because water helps, I feel like, wash away some of the unnecessary thoughts that might be going on in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's calming,
Right.
it just flows like some of the stuff out of me. I often tell some of my astrology clients after looking at their chart if they need some water and to do some journaling or self-reflection by a body of water.
Mm.
It helps flow, your writing and your thoughts. I totally resonate with that.
Yeah, and I'm also a Sagittarius, so I've got the fire element, and I think water just sort of grounds me and cools me down and balances it out.
That's awesome. And you were also working on a modern story, a modern Cinderella story. Are you going to
I
be working on that too?
now that you asked me,
Now you have to.
I'll start taking a look at it again. I've definitely thought about it on and off. And I get it, a lot of people who work outside of the creative fields don't realize how long things take. And sometimes I don't even realize how long things take, and I get frustrated. And then I hear about somebody who wrote a novel that literally took them 10 years.
Right. It takes a long time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. That's something that I've also realized because there's a lot to learn along the way too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what takes the time.
And sometimes it's those little smaller projects that give you inspiration and direction to continue with the larger ones.
Right. It's not just writing something. It's
Mm-hmm.
doing all of the other things. And then you have something. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like there are other parts involved. And yeah, I don't think people necessarily understand that. With your theater work at CMU, you work in the props department. Are there plans to get back into production this fall at the university?
So we are still sort of in the air. I'm going back next week. We're finally going to be able to put away everything that we left in March. Because right now in our building, there are 5 different shows worth of items that were mid-process. So we'll be working on that and also setting up for social distancing for our shops and our classes. Productions at this point look like they're going to be postponed for spring. We want to be able to give the students as much of a whole experience as possible rather than just having to do their work on Zoom. It's a very hands-on curriculum, and we want to allow them that as much as possible. We're also making space right now, considering the current climate, to re-examine our diversity and inclusion. And so a course right now is being formulated that will help us address some of the underlying issues before we continue, so that we can incorporate what we find and the discussions that we have into our work going forward.
Mm-hmm. There's an initiative to include more diversity in the theater department.
There is. And it's, it has to do with hiring and recruitment and the way we look at financial aid. There's a lot of discussions and conversations happening right now that are, way above where my pay grade is.
Yeah. So when you create the props, right, that are
I
used
do.
in productions, so how do you know what to create? Do you have conversations with the director, actors, actresses?
We work alongside with student designers, students who are learning how to be scenic designers. And part of their process is learning how to work with professional props department.
Okay, so you get some instruction from them.
Mhm.
That must be so like vast. Like, because you have to create like anything and everything for
Oh yeah, yeah.
like so many scenes and ideas. Like, I can't imagine. And I know you're good with working with your hands. And you like working with your hands and creating.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's yeah, I like props a lot because it's always something different. So I've done everything from making newspapers that have to have historic headlines on them to there was one show that required a taxidermy wolf. So I had to watch taxidermy videos on YouTube to figure out how to shape this pelt along this form. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and people can follow us on Instagram. It's just at CMU Props if they want to see some of the stuff that we've been doing. Had some amazing students come through too that help us create these things, and it's been really fun working with them as well.
And what was the last production that you were able to do?
Our last main stage was Into the Woods.
Oh, that's right, Into the Woods. I wanted to see that, but it was sold out.
Oh yeah, it sold out quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Kristin. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about all the awesome stuff you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. What is your YouTube site again?
It's MV Story Dance.
MV Story Dance.
Mhm.
Awesome. And you can also go to maquettevolante.org.
If you type into maquettevolante.org, on the first page that pops up is the news and events page, and I'll have everything current on there, straight through to the YouTube show from there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.